Hello everyone, story time. So just a heads up, this is going to be a little bit longer than some other videos. I've mentioned a bit about having some mental health issues. I did a video, there's going to be stuff flying up here. Um, I did a bipolar rant when I was having a rough day. I have bipolar disorder. There was another video about my history with eating disorders where I kind of detailed that. And then just last week, in light of the recent hype around celebrity suicides, I had posted a video about some of my experiences with that. So, kind of putting it out there as far as some of my history goes. Now, there's another piece that's left over, and that's substance use and substance abuse. So I kind of wanted to give a quick rundown of what I've kind of come to call the lost years, which is pretty much 2006 to 2012. It's interesting because in putting this together, kind of in my head, I actually wrote stuff down for this because the way I had been, alcohol was my drug of choice, and the way that I had been abusing substances that whole time. Some of my friends knew some of what was going on, but nobody knew everything that was going on. The only person who knew what was going on, if you can call that awareness, was me. There's large chunks of my memory that are gone. Maybe from, there was blackouts, obviously, and then other possible damage that could have been done, I don't know. But also, when you're in a habit of addiction every single day, they all kind of run together. They all kind of feel the same. So, I'm going to be using my glasses today. Time-wise, I think we're okay. My phone should hold out. So these will be going up and, you know me, they'll be going up and down, and I got one of these. So, 2006, I was living in Philadelphia, and it was the last year that I would be living there, 2006 into the beginning of 2007. I had gotten out of a bad relationship earlier that year, and it was during the course of that relationship that I went from college drinker, graduated in 2005 from college drinker to weekend warrior, to drink on a Monday night, to go to brunch on the weekends, I'm drinking in the daylight, to, it escalated up. If you know anything about addiction, if you're watching this, you might, I don't know, you might not. But it built on itself, and I crossed that zero barrier from problem drinker to what's usually called an alcoholic very quickly, and I was very young when it happened. I was about 23 or 24. So, lost that whole year, came home briefly, took a medical leave from my job there, went to outpatient mental health treatment because certainly I was acting crazy, but no one thought anything to do with the booze was happening. So that fell through, moved home. So 2007, mid-year, I moved in with my parents. I came back to this part of the state. I'm in northeastern Pennsylvania now. It was just to get back on my feet. I still haven't left. So this place sucks you in. It's like, it's hard to get out of these valley walls sometimes. Let's see. So I stayed with my parents. I did some outpatient drug and alcohol treatment. That kind of went well. That took me to the beginning of 2008. In the spring of 2008, I got into some trouble when I was in New York. I drove from where I live to Long Island and was in no condition to drive. And I was going to visit a friend, poor friend, and got there, and I ended up getting arrested when I was like a couple blocks from his house. So I ended up having to stay there with him, which he was generous enough to do, or much of a masochist to do. And then I went to jail there for like a couple weeks. So they sprung me. I went home. On the drive home with my mother, who is a nervous Nelly, while it's pouring rain on the Cross Bronx Expressway, I'm calling to arrange funding to go to a treatment center. I don't have a job, so I don't have any insurance at this point. So we're applying for like welfare, medical assistance, stuff like that. So rehab take one. I go to a very nice one in this area. It's usually ranked in the top 5 by whatever bodies rank rehabs. I don't know. It was like camp. I never went to camp as a kid, but it's how I imagined camp would be. You get up at the same time every morning, and everyone has breakfast, and then everyone checks in for the day, and they make you read religious stuff. They all insist it's not religious, but it is. Uh, 12-step meetings, small group therapy. You talk, everyone gives you a hug if you have a breakthrough, like you cry, or if someone who's usually mean does something nice, or someone who's shy talks, everyone claps. It's, stuff like that. So I got out of there. I was drunk within a week. And then I got into some more trouble about 6 months later, and that put me, they put an alcohol bracelet on me pre-sentence, more legal trouble. And then I was sentenced to about 5 years total. It was a combination of probation, house arrest, jail time, participation in a county treatment court program. So I didn't go to state prison. I was in the county jail. Sometime I'll talk about mental health treatment in the county jail. I was no advocate at the time. You don't want to open your mouth when you're in prison or on probation, because if you make too much noise, they'll lock you back up. So you don't say anything. I'm off paper now, bitches. So buckle up. So in and out of jail, onto probation. Let's see, what happened next? 2010, I relapsed, so we're going through 2009. I was in and out of jail, put the bracelet back on. I was not locked in the house arrest. I was able to work, and I did get a job. And that got me into 2010, where I had relapsed for a few months once the alcohol bracelet came off. I think within a week or two of it coming off, I was drinking again. And where are we at with time? Because I'm winded. Oh, it's fine. And bracelet came off, got drunk again, came clean. I was very honest with my then probation officer and the people I was seeing at outpatient treatment. Let them know what was up. Went back to that same shishi rehab. And it was the same program. I didn't need a tour. I knew what all the rules were. My mental health was compromised at the same time. I'm not going to mention the mental health part, but understand that while all this booze is going in and out of my system and I'm making these moves, I'm having symptoms of untreated bipolar disorder up until 2010. And from that point, there's different psych meds which are not helpful that are mixing with the medication and with the alcohol, and I'm not taking them as prescribed. So I'm contributing to this madness on top of the fact that I'm abusing alcohol, and I'm now dependent on it. My tolerance is very high. So, shishi rehab, they furloughed me to a 90-day rehab where I met Mark. We'll go over that some other time too. I went from there to a men's halfway house, which was a waste of my funding's money for me to go to. And then I moved back in with my parents, and that was halfway through 2011. So I did like a 7-month stretch of treatment that took me from my area down to central Pennsylvania and then right back up to here. So I got out of there, and I still wasn't feeling. After 7 months of treatment, I needed a drink. So I did. And that summer is mostly lost. It was just sitting in bed drinking and queuing up sad YouTube videos to try to make myself cry so I could feel like something. I don't know. I was trying to provoke emotion out of myself, and I would sit at home and drink and try to make myself cry. I don't know why. Sad songs, everything. Last episode, Golden Girls, anything I could queue up. That's so gay, but that's what would do it. Eventually, went in and out of the psych ward a couple times, because again, meds, alcohol, it's hard for them to tell what was going on with me. And we're into 2012. 2012, Mark moves in. He's having some transitions because he went into a halfway house, the same one that I had gone into, and he moves in with me and my parents. So now my drinking, I had relapsed again, and I was sneak hiding it from my parents. You want to say, how could they not know? Who wants to believe that their kid is a daily drunk, They weren't in denial. They knew what was happening, but for what they knew, there was even more going on. So, Mark moves in, And then I end up in the psych ward again in, I guess, April of that year. So we're into April 2012. And I come out, and then they changed my meds again. So I had like 4 med changes in like a 6-month period. My cigarette went out. One second. And at that point, I had had enough. I had had enough. I called my probation officer drunk and said, I got out of the hospital last week again. I can't stop drinking. I don't know what to do. Just lock me up for the rest of my sentence, if you need to. And then whatever happens to me happens. But I'm sick of ducking under the cover, peeking out windows when I'm drinking, worried that my PO is going to come by. I'm getting paranoid. So, and I said, and I'm just thinking of offing myself again. I was getting depressed and kind of desperate. And she was very concerned. I had a really great probation officer. She said, well, are you home alone? Are you safe? I said, yeah, I'm home alone. She's like, okay, hang out there for a little bit. I'll give you a call back. Half an hour later, they were at the door. The only way she could have kept me safe, that was within her power to do, was to take me to the jail, and I was put on behavior watch. So, and I did violate one of the terms of my probation, and had been for a while. I drank. So jail was where I was supposed to be. I was on behavior watch for a few days. They detoxed me there. And then 3 weeks later, I was sent to another treatment center. This one dealt with people who have co-occurring mental health and drug and alcohol issues, which I have. Severe ones, both. And I started getting better. It's worth noting that the other treatment centers that I had gone to were all very focused on the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, and then the other programs like NA and stuff like that flow from it. The last treatment center I went to was not as focused on that. It was focused on managing your mental health, and then learning some coping skills. Not so much, was dad mean to me, or did some kid call me fat, and that's why I drink mouthwash in the gutter. It wasn't, in that vein. But it was, you're going to live with this. You're going to live with this for the rest of your life. Most likely, maybe not. Some people go into full remission and it's never an issue again. But if you're going to be dealing with this, how are you going to deal? What are you going to do? And here's some real concrete solutions for maybe things that'll, help. And what do you know? I started getting better. So 2012, that, I started getting well. I was court ordered to go to AA meetings. So I did. And we're getting back into some written stuff here. I got a sponsor. I got a home group. I had a good sponsor, a very good sponsor, actually. And I had a small support group, little circle of friends. And then life started to take over. I started going back to work very slowly. I went from working a day a month to part-time to full-time within the next couple years. Mark and I started dating after just being friends and roommates. Mark and I moved out. We got our own place. I'm working full-time. So life moved on. I moved away from where all the people I was going to meetings with were. And, I pretty much stopped going. I started having, I liked the people. I liked the community that was there, but I had theological differences. And, and that came up when I started to have a sponsee. I thought, I can take what I need and leave the rest, but do I feel like I can spoon feed this to somebody else? I didn't. I couldn't do it. So, I did end up relapsing, which they pretty much said would happen. And, it's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's like if you don't go to meetings, it's like around every corner. So, I went back for a tune-up. I took about a couple months off work and got myself back into a good spot. I had relapsed. I had drank a few times, and I had a history of bender drinking where I would drink a few times and go off. So after I had a few, I went back into treatment, and it broke the cycle. And then my mental health provider and I started working with medication alternatives, because I said I had to go back to outpatient when I left there. And outpatient was the same thing. It was, teaching you how to go to AA meetings. I'm like, AA meetings are not aftercare. Aftercare treatment is aftercare. So, yeah, don't drag me into a church basement and have me drink coffee and tell me you're helping. So, outpatient, And then they recommended going to meetings, and I did what they requested. You know, I wasn't ordered. My employer didn't say, do this or you're fired, but I wanted to follow up and with all the recommendations they had. Luckily, my insurance pulled out, so I didn't have to keep going. So, I don't know. I was still getting mental health treatment this whole time because, you know, treating the addiction, whatever way I was choosing to treat it, doesn't fix or undo the mental health things. Certainly, it's easier to manage serious mental illness if you're not drowned in a reservoir of vodka. But it still needs to be addressed on its own. It doesn't go away. It's not aggravated as much, but it doesn't go away. So I was still following up with that. And, you know, it's interesting. I've had a couple instances where I've spoken to people about mental illness and other issues, and they've brought it back to the idea of a higher power, which is big in the 12 steps. The word higher power is there, and then the word God appears a number of times, but it's not a religious program. So, and they have feelings. Everything goes back to fear. Anxiety is fear. Paranoia is fear. This is fear. That is fear. Apparently, if I think the television is talking to me, that's fear. I should get a higher power in my life. And I don't think that having depression to the point where you're cutting yourself daily has much to do with having like a defective character. I don't know any evidence-based treatment protocol that involves confession, restitution, and prayer. You know, I don't know of any other spiritual diseases that I can think of. Now, not that I'm weighing in on the causes of alcoholism. You know, trauma can be a big one. Co-occurring obviously happens, so there's a mental health overlap there. Some people may just really, really, really like to drink or have what they call an addictive personality. You know, it's not for me to guess at that. I'm not a pro, but having spent some time with folks, it's interesting to see. I mean, just right now, I was listing the things that could cause it, and then saying at the end of it, I don't know. Because I don't know. I'm not a professional. You'd be surprised how many people you run into who think they are. Or a professional at something that they're not a professional at. It's at best reckless and at worst borderline criminal to give medical advice if you're not a doctor or a nurse or something like that. So, you know, and having mental health and going into 12-step meetings can be bad. There's some really understanding people that get it's a medical issue, and that it's not to weigh in. And then there's other folks who say you're still using if you're on medication, that you're not truly sober. You know, I would take my not truly sober over some people's sobriety. You know, I don't attend meetings at this point to manage my sobriety. I go to therapy. I take good care of myself physically. I sleep well. I eat well. I keep myself in a good space mentally. I take naltrexone. I take a medication that helps block cravings. It's as effective as 5 good meetings a week, which is still hard to find. And I stay in touch with family and people I care about. I miss some of the people from AA. But it's kind of like leaving the LDS or the Amish. Once you're gone, you're gone. Even now, I'm probably would be labeled like a dry drunk. Like I'm not drinking, but there's probably something about the quality of my life that would be open season for criticism. Because I didn't get sober that way. You know, they'll say in AA, nobody ever comes back and says it got you better out there. Well, you know what? I didn't go back because why would I go back and say anything if I'm doing okay and I'm not there? So I don't know. I wouldn't knock what helps some people out, but it's one solution of many, and there's a lot of other ways that people get by. I remember meeting people who had like 30 years sober, and they would say, you know, my kids still won't talk to me. They're still upset. I'm like, and after seeing some of the old timers, my God, I was like, you sanctimonious piece of shit. If your kids aren't talking to you now, it's not because you drank 30 years ago. It's because you're still a sanctimonious piece of shit. That's why. But, you know, I would usually just say nothing until I got outside to have a cigarette. So enough 12-step bashing. They're not bad. I would do it all over again. I would not have come out of rehab and tried to do it myself. There was no better way to be re-socialized, have responsibility, meet people who would pick up the phone if I was having a hard time. Make no mistake, I was still craving a drink when I got out of rehab, and those were the folks who were there for me. But as time wore on and I started to evolve, I felt like I was being kind of held back by a narrow way of thinking that was there. So I outgrew it. I didn't outgrow my alcoholism. I can't do nothing to treat it, but I outgrew that method of managing it. So that's pretty much all I have, which is good because we're at 20 minutes and that's a long time to listen to me and it's a long time for me to talk. So that's substance abuse of mine and recovery such as it is as we go. There was a lot of pretty personal stuff in there. I don't think I said anything aside from the mental health stuff that I said in other videos that's not part of public record. It's nothing that I think an employer couldn't pull on a background check. And, you know, it's nothing that some of it wasn't even printed probably in the local newspaper. I've Googled myself. You can't find too much dirt on me. But, you know, it is what it is. It's part of what happened. It's part of my life. So, and hopefully, I don't know, maybe I'll post this on my personal page because I think I have some people that would be, I don't know if they'd be interested to know because this sounds like terrible. It sounds awful. But I lived, you know, I don't know. I don't know how. I don't know why exactly, but I managed and was carried for most of it. But maybe they'd be interested in finding out what happened during all those years that I didn't return their calls. So, thanks for watching if you've watched this long. And if you know somebody who you think is drinking a little too much, you're better off to say something than not. A lot of people who cared about me didn't say anything, and I got worse and worse. I might have got worse anyway, but you want to feel like you at least tried to do something, so say something. That's my only suggestion. My non-medical, non-professional suggestion. So, thanks for watching. I'll catch up with y'all soon. Bye.